Hello and welcome to the Justin Hamilton podcast. We have a great interview today with the author Alex Hammond, better known as A.W. Hammond. His latest book, which I have here, which is, back to France, the Moscow Defector. This is the third book in a trilogy, but don't let that deter you. If you haven't read the first two, you could go straight to this one. It's just more rich if you have read the previous two. This is a thrilling book, and it is a real page turner. I saved it for a bit of travel. I had a bit of travel a few weeks ago and thought, oh, this will be great. This will keep me company for a few days. And I was done much quicker and had to get another book. So that's always a good sign that something has really hit the mark. Alex started off as an acquaintance. I read all of his books, and over time we've become friends. So I'm really thrilled to have him here, and I'm really rapt with the success he's having with these books. So not only do we chat about the process. Not only do we chat about this book, we don't give away any spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that. But we're also discussing what might be coming up in the future. So stick around, and I hope you enjoy this. Uh, just a couple of little things. I have a sponsor. Yes, you probably heard me talk about Wonder Pies. They have come to the Justin Hamilton podcast and said, "We like you, you like us. How about we work together?" And I took one bite of their pies and went, "Yeah, yeah, I can do this. I can definitely take on a sponsor, and I can definitely take on you." Wonder Pies are just that perfect blend of pastry to filling, and they have a broad range of pies and pastries and cakes, and it's all top notch. You can go to their cafes that are situated in Victoria. You can buy individually, or you can go to wonderpies.com.au and you can buy like whole boxes of some of their pies. You can get, like more sweet pies, apricot, stuff like that. And it's bang for your buck. You can just stick them in the freezer, pull them out, heat one up, and you'll be ready to go. So if you can't get there to one of their cafes in Victoria, you can always get them online. wonderpies.com.au. Also, what else can I tell you? I have a show coming up on the 19th of September in Adelaide. It's going to be a big kind of variety show. Adelaide Comedy is celebrating 25 years, and I've been going back and helping out with different types of celebrations. This next one on the 19th of September will be starring my good friend Mickey D, who started as a kid back in, I think it was 98. We'll find out more about that at the show. And Charlie Hill Smith, who was an Adelaide comedy legend and actually hosted my very first gig back in 1994. Yes, what a long time ago that was. He is going to be performing with his band Truckers for Christ. And so what we're going to do is Mickey and I are going to do stand up. Then we're going to record a live podcast with Mickey and Charlie. And then Charlie's band is going to play. So if you would like to come along to that, head to adelaidecomedy.com and you can find deals for that. Remember, if you're a Patreon subscriber, DM me and I'll put you on the door so you don't have to worry about missing out on a ticket. Yes, you know what? I'll save some other things for the end of this podcast so we can get straight into the interview with Alex. So why don't we all just sit back and let this baby roll? Let's welcome in Alex Hammond. Congratulations on the new novel. We were just talking before I started pressing record that I know how much work goes into a novel, and then I was pretty much churned through this in a few days. And there's right towards the end, I was like, oh, I should be slowing down to savor the effort that's gone into it. But it's a page turner. There's nothing you can do
Yes.
about it. Once you hit a certain part, you just have to keep going.
No, 100. Well, yeah, that's all good news to me. That's all I want to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's the it's deliberately constructed to be read with a degree of speed and you know yeah, and particularly when it's got mystery elements to it, you sort of it's because it feels comforting that the readers sort of still got that all in their parts of it in their brain, so that the reveals and the twists have impact. You know,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it was interesting. This is not necessarily a one for one, and just one of those delightful coincidences that happens sometimes with popular culture. But I saw the movie Weapons, which is a horror film by Zach Cregger, and
yeah,
that's broken into chapters as well, where you change character POV. And
yeah.
so
Cool.
with each change, that changes a little bit in genre, but it's quite amazing how that creates a momentum because it feels like a reset, and you have that in your latest novel as well.
Yes, yeah, no. And that's sort of it's fun to do as a writer or a creative because it lets you sort of comment on the characters from another character's perspective, or
Yeah.
they see things slightly differently, or the way they engage with the world. So it keeps things fresh, I think, is what I
Mm.
discovered, what I discovered in doing that. Whereas the first book in the series all told from the perspective of the Auguste Duchene,
Yeah.
and that was fine because it was the first book and I was learning about him as a character. But by the third book, it felt like it gave me, his estranged wife Sabine. It gave me her point of view and
Mm.
this and her view on the world and the sort of her motivations, and it just gave me a little bit of a little top up of energy each time I sort of came to write her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it means you get because you can get back into the comfort of August when you get to his chapters.
Yes.
And knowing who he is, and then Sabine is, someone that is uh, kind of a mystery shadow figure in the previous two books, somewhere over
Yeah.
there. So to have her come into the light is was not something I was expecting. By the way, I don't read the back of the blurb. You send me the book,
Oh,
I go,
nice.
let's go. So I had
Oh,
no
good
idea that
work.
was about to happen.
Yeah, there's a few books out there I think that would be benefited by not having a blurb at all. I recently read a Robert Harris book called The Silent Hours, and I didn't read the blurb in that, and I went through to reading it, and there's something they give away in the blurb, which as a reader, if you just hit the book not knowing anything,
Yeah,
it's quite a clever twist, and I think he'd
right.
deliberately written it that way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It,
And I don't, I'm
it's
not going to say in case other people read it as a book, but
it's like a bad trailer, isn't it? Like when you're sitting there going, "Yep,
yeah.
I've seen the movie."
Yeah, exactly. I know what's coming up next. I haven't seen that thing out of the trailer. Where's the bit where, yeah, the
Yeah,
Human
you
Torch
can't have.
screams at Ben Grimm to say the phrase, So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It's funny though. There's some people who do like that. There's they're the strange people who pick up a novel and read the last page and
yeah,
then
yeah.
go back to the start.
But without getting too sidetracked, Alien classic trailer. You didn't know the trailer for Alien is just the egg hatching. The light coming
Yes.
out of it. You've got no
Yeah.
idea what this film is about going in.
Yeah, yeah, and I just wrote about this on my Substack as my one of my five favorite horror films. I remember my mum and her friend coming home because they didn't have any idea that was coming,
Oh,
and they just couldn't stop talking. They were like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this
yeah,
happened, and
wow.
then someone in the cinema screamed.
Yeah, nice,
It's like
nice.
what a wonderful experience to have at the cinema,
Yeah,
which sounds strange. Someone screamed and it was fantastic, but it was Alien, so that's what you want.
that's what you
Um,
want.
I love that this novel is set in Berlin, 1948. It seems like a time right with history to explore
Yeah.
lots of different, not just adventures, but ideas and emotions, etc. What is it that you find about this time so compelling?
Um, I think for me, coming out of basically the first book is set towards the end of the Second World War. The
Mm,
second one is set after as they come into Berlin, just after the Russians have come in, just at the very end of the war. And
mm,
then this is really getting to tell the story of what is really the Berlin blockade and the first major confrontation and what sets the Cold War. This is when the Cold War itself starts. So I
mm.
thought that was really interesting because we of course reflect back on history and go, oh yeah, Stalin. not a good guy, not a good guy,
Right.
right?
Right.
But at the time, a lot of people's perception was, well, he was our ally. He just fought with us. He was called Uncle Joe in the press, like he was
Mm.
a sort of warm and cuddly Uncle Joe, you
Yeah.
know. Just don't mention the gulags. So it was fascinating to write from the perspective of characters who don't have our benefit of hindsight.
Yes.
And for something like the Berlin blockade, I mean, it's just such a feat of human of I guess logistics.
Yeah.
Logistics doesn't sound sexy, but
Yeah.
there's this one really compelling figure from it, which is sort of stuck in my brain, which is that the basically Berlin was surrounded by land, and they had to fly airplanes in to keep it supplied because
Yeah.
West Berlin was the Allies, East Berlin was the Soviets, and Berlin was located in East Germany, so there was no way for the Allies to get anything in by land, so they had to fly everything in. And the total flight time by these pilots were predominantly American with some English, some Canadian, some New Zealand, some South African, some Australian pilots as well. They flew 148 million kilometers, and
Mm.
the distance from the Earth to the Sun is 150 million kilometers. So
Oh,
the total flight time was 2 million kilometers short of flying to the Sun.
wow.
So it was a lot of airplane time,
Yeah.
but I think we just gloss over it in our brains when reflect on the history of that time. That oh well, yeah, of course they kept Berlin open, but there was genuine point at which the Allies were questioning whether it was worth the effort and whether they should do it, and they thought had they not succeeded, spoiler warning, they would have lost potentially they would have lost Berlin, but then not just Germany, they felt, but also up Western Europe to Soviet control. So there was this real anxiety right at the outset. So it became very clear that the Soviets weren't playing playing nice. And yeah, and it's just as a setting, it's still a destroyed city. There's all these civilians. There's
Mm.
2 million people still living in West Berlin. Um,
Mm.
and 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 it's just sort of how do they get through? I mean, most of the city is destroyed, like something 70-80% of the city has been decimated by the war. And so I felt it was a great way to tell this sort of epic story of the sort of feat of logistics, which is going on in the background, and our characters have a little bit to do with it, but that human story of like how people are surviving, and then
Mm.
that's a setting for what then becomes also this bigger narrative around a conflict of ideology, the West and the Soviets.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I felt there was just so much going on. It was ripe with possibility.
A really good blend as well of the macro story, which you just explained, but there's also a personal story, and
Yeah,
I reckon that's really hard to do. I saw a movie last year, which The Dry, the sequel to The Dry, Force of Nature,
Force of
which
Nature. Yeah,
um, I overall enjoyed, but they added a personal element to the main character, to that area that to me it just kind of felt forced. It's like,
yeah. Okay.
well, he had the personal story in The Dry. This could
Yeah,
have just been, for me, this just could have been his next adventure, and I understand if you can get something personal in it, it draws you in more. But to me, it was
yeah.
just I couldn't help but think, oh my God, this guy's had a terrible upbringing. It's everywhere he goes. He's got some personal tragedy that's aligned with it.
Yeah.
But this
Oh,
does a really good blend, I think, of because it's almost uh, it's a confluence of events that neither of our main characters really have agency in
no.
creating, right? It's so
Yeah.
it's a coincidence,
Yeah.
but a fair one.
No, it's a good point. Because they're sort of on the lower rungs, and each of Duchenne is working for the Allies essentially at this point, and Sabine, his strange wife, is by various ways is now with the Soviets, and I
Mm,
don't think it's giving too much away to say that she's now questioning
mm,
her lofty ideals of somebody when fought in the Spanish Civil War against fascism, and got then
yeah.
bound up and wrapped up in the sort of in the Soviet fight in the Second World War, and then is now
Mm,
questioning what what is it all worth? What was it all about, sort of thing. So yeah, you're
mm,
quite right. Bringing in their personal story, and finding a way for them to be subject to the larger events going on around them,
Mm.
the machinations of the different nation states. Um, it's like the hand is being forced, and it's great from a thriller viewpoint because there's certain that loss of agency is always a good driver,
Mm.
for characters in a pressurized situation.
It's we've seen this in this idea of questioning ideology, specifically that's early kind of there was that 20s 30s sense that communism was as a theory a really interesting and possibly a better choice of how to live your
Yeah,
life. And then post World War II, you start to see that ideology become weaponized and turned into something that people who once align themselves with it do start to question. And it makes sense that Sabine has hit that point, knowing her background with the Spanish.
yeah, exactly. And I don't know if I'm sure other writers out there are capable of it, but I didn't think I was capable of writing a sympathetic character who aligns himself with Stalin. It's
Right?
quite.
Yeah. It's but
So
it is interesting though because you're right. This is the period where Stalin is, considered one of the good guys. But it's often lost to history that uh, early on in World War II, Hitler and Stalin had a little joint pact,
yes, they
and
did.
then it wasn't until Hitler got too high on his meth and went, you know what, I can take Russia, that it all
Yeah,
fell
that's
apart.
right. That's right. That's they're named after everybody's favorite cocktail, the Molotov Accord. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's
No, people do
fascinating.
forget that. They do forget that, and that yeah, and there's yeah. Poland hasn't forgotten. I guarantee you that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Because this is such a specific time, I'm curious about the nuts and bolts of it. Like, how do you research all of this to make sure that it's accurate? And were there interesting things that popped up that you didn't know about? And also, on the flip side, uh, were there any in early drafts? Were there any goofs that you kind of put in, like uh, something that wasn't invented by then, or language that was anachronistic?
yeah, it's the way I go about doing the research is I'll often start and try to find a good source text that kind of gives you a good overview of the history, because then that kind of gives you insights to, oh, this could be an exciting thing to build off of. So
Yeah.
there's a sequence sort of towards the sort of halfway point of the book, just after, which is an event that took place, and so you can see a way that could be quite compelling and exciting to have your characters participate in that.
Mm.
So that's the sort of higher level stuff. But then I sort of deep dive into sort of little details and that's, I think, the challenge as somebody writing historical fiction is you sometimes want to just dump all your exciting little juicy bits of detail in there, but you don't
Mm.
want to overwhelm the reader, because it's not it's not a lecture on the cigarettes of the 1940s, right? But
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
discover things as you go through. So yeah, yeah. I also find advertising is very helpful, period advertising, because you get an insight on what was being sold. So you can find the old ads, press ads, or posters, and
Ah,
that kind of gives you
yeah.
an idea of what was being presented as aspirational all the way. So there's in it, when we thought about removing it, we went back and forth with the editor and I, but I wanted to sort of keep it in. There was a brand of cigarettes that was being Russian brand of cigarettes called Drug,
Yep.
Drug, and it had an image of a little dog on of a like a dog's head on it, and Drug means friend in Russian, but of
Right.
course, Drug out of A Clockwork Orange is,
Yes.
Anthony Burgess was using Russian and so I thought, oh, that's cool. I want to keep it in just because there's a little bit of a, Easter eggs synergy sort of thing going
Yeah.
on there with this idea. So those are the sorts of things that you kind of come across as sort of tangential things that you get when you're sort of doing research, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I look, I did. It wasn't in the writing, but there was something where I learned something, almost made a sort of critical error. If it weren't for the book designer, we would have been and she corrected me, thankfully. But when we're looking at the different cover designs, and we had one where a couple where red square was able to be seen because it's got the word Moscow in the title. If you want to show something out of Moscow, um,
Mm.
and I'd always assumed a red square is like big open. It's a square, obviously. There's the buildings, and you have to come in it from all sides, and it's. But she had framed it and it's what we ended up being the final iterations of it had been the final cover design of the sort of archway. And I was like, "Oh, you sure there's an archway?" She said, "No, no, no. That's the something or other archway. It's opposite red square, and that's the angle you can see it from." So
Oh, right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So she'd thoroughly done her research. I don't know
Yeah.
whether it was a bit of Google Earth research to work out the exact angles and points. Yeah,
Huh.
which is good. Which is kind of funny too, because I'd put through a correction ages ago for the first book when they re-released it about they'd had the Eiffel Tower out of a view from the d'Orsay train station window,
Right.
and that's not an angle you can see. And so
Yeah.
I'd sort of caught something that time around, and everybody was greatly appreciative. And she caught something this time around, and I was very greatly appreciated. So yeah, there,
That's funny, those little things that you just they're
yeah,
the things that are easy to miss as well, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Uh
writing the Russian stuff, I drew very heavily on a John Steinbeck piece of we'd call it narrative nonfiction now, but at that time they didn't have that word. But
yeah.
Steinbeck traveled, got permission, and took a photographer with him. I'm blanking on his name, but they went and traveled and did a whole photo essay and write an essay for Life magazine, and they
Yeah,
got
right.
permission to travel about throughout Russia, well, the Soviet Union, excuse me,
Yeah.
because they also visited Ukraine and Georgia and Russia. And they're little slices of life that Steinbeck I stole from, just because he gives these little snapshots that were really kind of like fascinating little ideas. Like Georgian wines are numbered. They don't have what type of wine it is or
Right.
where it came from, which region in Georgia in under the Soviets, it was number 29 or number 42. You knew number
Right.
42 was a kind of a rosé, which
Right.
also is great because you think, oh, that's right, that's Soviet bureaucracy. They don't want to name anything, they
Yes.
want to give credit to people. They've got these communes out there making wine in Georgia, and it's numbers. Of course, it's numbers. What else would it
Yeah.
be? So
Yeah.
yeah, those little things are just cool to pepper throughout. That's always
Yeah.
fun part of it's the research.
I bet you can get lost in it too and think, oh, I should get back to writing.
Oh, yeah,
Or do you
absolutely.
do the research first and then write,
I do
or do
the
you?
I try to do as much of the research as I can, and then I have a technique that's still completely learned from Stephen King's book on writing, where
Mm,
King advises you just type in. So you're going to go research a type of wine. You just
mm,
type in wine, and I put square brackets around it, and then I'll go through and research those details. So there's the overarching research I do in order to write the book, but then the little detail stuff is sometimes
right.
I go back and backfill that. Yeah, and so it doesn't slow down your momentum as a writer. Is King's excellent advice on how not to do that, because
That's
otherwise you're an hour and a
that's
half later,
hard.
you're now reading about Georgian cheese production, and it's got nothing to
Yeah,
do with the
yeah.
book. But yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, it's fascinating. That's the hard thing, isn't it, with writing, is there's so many everyday distractions and things that can sideswipe you, and losing momentum is
yeah,
really dangerous.
yeah, absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely.
and and good on Stephen King and with on writing. That book has never failed to be helpful, has it?
Oh, it's a fantastic, particular second half, which is his toolkit. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. This is also just while I think of it, this is and I mean temperature wise, this is a cold book. Like
Mm,
I felt cold reading this. So this is bad weather. Everyone's clothes seem like they're just not quite thick enough, or
yeah.
they're a bit shit, like they're frayed. They should be replacing them. So anyway, that was just something I wanted to mention that I felt it. It's interesting when you feel, and recently I read all of the Akira manga. Like, so I
Oh
read
yeah.
that from start to end, and someone said to me, "What was it like?" And I said, I really enjoyed it. I can see why it's so influential." Blah blah. And then I was like, "And it is the loudest graphic novel I've ever read because everyone is yelling and it's
Is
high
yelling.
emotion in every panel. And you get
Yeah.
to you get like 20, 30 pages into it, and you think, oh God, I've got a bit of a headache."
I'm
So
glad to see they're
it's
able to track that through into the film.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hey, so I don't want to give anything away, but the opening chapter is a wild opening, I reckon, and feels like a real statement. And I don't want to give anything away, but what was the motivation for going back to World War One?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, partly because I wanted a first chapter that would sort of grab the reader by the lapels and
Yeah,
pull them into the novel.
yeah.
Uh, but also because there's a bit, so we've got this two-hander story being told from Duchene's perspective and his wife, and there's something that happens with her at one point in the book, which
Mhm.
is a moral, morally potentially reprehensible action that she does,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
wanted to have didn't want her to seem less sympathetic or less complicated than Duchenne. So I needed to put him on a similar
Oh,
footing to her
yes.
so that he particularly also, just being sort of mindful of the dynamics of their relationship and also just gender politics more broadly. I didn't want him to seem like a white knight and her like a somebody who needed saving, or at the same time, I didn't want to see him to see without criticism and her a sort of a, an Eve-like figure of Adam and Eve, like she's the one who commits the sort
Yeah,
of, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
it was partly strategic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yes. Oh, smart. Yeah. You know what? I didn't even now it's hard because I want to say what it is, but I don't want to give it away. But I see exactly what you mean. I kind of uh the the way uh I remember putting it, I was on a flight and I finished the first chapter and then I literally put it on the tray in front of me and went, ooh, okay. And then and then picked it up and then started again. And
yeah.
I guess it for me not only is a reminder of this character's history, but that we've seen through the previous novels and talked about and had
Mm,
tastes of, but it kind of made me remember that he's old, he's sore,
yeah.
he's seen a lot, um, but he's kind of fearless and he's kind of not afraid to do what needs to be done, which as the story progresses, the stakes kept rising because that never left the back of my head.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Yeah, no. It's yeah, I hadn't considered it like that. That's yeah, I think plus, also, I wanted to sort of round out why he is anti. I mean, he's not a pacifist in the sense, but he also doesn't like violence, So
Yes.
because he's been through a war, and oftentimes, he refer back in the previous books, and I thought, oh, it's a good. If anybody's read, the series, it's good to sort of show some of those events about why he has such issues and make it actually a little bit more. It sort of sounds weird, but make it more intimate for him as to why it
Mm,
was that he's not just a simple like, oh yeah, I was shooting people running across no man's land and between trenches, but rather
mm.
there's a very specific incident. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a crazy good start. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Was this always planned as a trilogy, or was this something that the Paris Collaborator it could have been a one and done. I'm glad it wasn't, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to go back to that character, but each novel could have been, oh well, that's it. And so I was curious, did you have some ideas in mind?
I had a very I had a obviously when I wrote the Paris Collaborator, I had a strong idea about because very firm idea about what the book was going to be about, and then I had an idea about what a second book could be, and then a
Mm,
very vague glimmer of like possibly where a third book may be. But I'd even considered setting it even further back in time to sort of during the as the Berlin Wall is going up. But
mm,
then it was just a pure logistics sort of question of, well, they're only going to be X old by the time we get to that date. So if the
yeah.
timeline's here, there's actually this other intervening event that I could probably tell a similar story.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, you're quite right. Like the first one was written to be, if it ended up going that way, a standalone, because like with
yeah.
anything in writing these days, it's really on the basis of how does a novel sell, that you get a sense of whether. So it's rarer, I think, that a publisher will commit to an entire trilogy, you know, from the outset, and they're quite capable of cutting their losses about a set book series if it's not. if it's not doing well. So I just
Mm,
wanted to sort of write a series that could have stopped at any point. So it
mm.
was really gratifying to be able to finish out a trilogy. It's always sort of been a goal of mine to write a trilogy of books. Um, yeah, so I had some loose ideas about what it might be by the third one, but
Yeah,
I sort of had
yeah,
to sit down and
interesting.
work nut through what it might be, on paper and make some notes and sort of put my ideas
Yeah,
together.
you know what? I prefer the. I'm glad that you went to the blockade than the wall. Like the
Yeah,
wall, the blockade is, um, it's just a slightly more interesting idea because, uh, it's almost it's the era where, as you said earlier, everyone's going, these are our friends.
yeah,
So
exactly.
there's that ambiguity within all of that. So it just makes for more friction at any given moment.
Yeah, yeah. No. And it's a city under siege and there's desperation of amongst
Mm,
people at that time. So it's a kind of a pressure cooker of an environment. Yeah.
yeah. We mentioned the double narrative. Was this always the way this story was going to play out, or did that kind of reveal itself to you at various stages in the writing?
I thought I was sort of lightly inspired by a book by China Miéville called The City and the City,
Hmm.
um, which is a sort of very loosely a sort of detective story told from across two locations. And I thought, oh well, if I'm going to tell a sort of East and West Berlin sort of story,
Yeah,
it makes sense to have a two character perspective, because you can't readily cross between the. I mean, you can readily cross between the two at this point, but it just made more interesting a story to sort of tell around these two characters essentially investigating sort of similar area without saying too
yeah,
much.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it absolutely was always planned to be the two perspectives. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's how I was sort of in the second book needed to introduce Sabine and build up her a little bit, not as a point of view character, but sort of start to sow the seeds for what would become the third one.
yeah. Right. Sabine was always going to be the counterpoint, not because you've also got the daughter who's a pretty fascinating
Right.
character too, and seems to be
Yeah.
having some pretty good adventures.
And I think that's a really great point. At one point, it was going to be all three of them. I thought, oh,
Oh
maybe I could have all three
yeah,
of them and tell the perspective
yeah,
from all three. But then it was just a matter of like, to what you were saying earlier, I could kind of work out a coincidence and a way to bring them together that sort of made narrative sense for two characters. But to bring
yeah,
three in, I would have
yeah,
needed, and I thought I had a way to do it, which was basically through manipulation,
yeah.
bring the daughter in as a pawn to manipulate against Duchene.
Right.
But without giving too much away, we'd sort of had that in the first book.
Yes.
And then I thought I was biting up way more than I could chew in a sort of tense narrative, with a third
Oh
character.
man. Yeah.
But it's a great call out. That was originally how I planned to do it, was bring the entire family back together. I thought it would round
Yeah.
it out nicely. I was a bit disappointed that I couldn't figure out a way, but yeah.
Well, there's I mean this is a compliment. There's a simplicity and an elegance to this. Like
Hmm.
it's like we're here and then we're here and then we're here, then we're here, and you're following these parallel narratives that have their own storylines
Yeah,
that just by coincidence, well, not coincidence, it's because of the history of the time is centered in
yeah,
Berlin.
yeah,
So I I could I could imagine the crunching of gears you had at points where the desire to make something happen as a writer, and then just going, oh God, this is what? This is the way it should be.
yeah. No, 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 no. I would have liked to have done it, but then I also thought, oh, I'll be stealing from the story between the Duchenne and his eh, the strange wife, his lover. I want to tell that story. I've sort of done the father-daughter story in the first book,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
trust myself that I wouldn't rehash the same ground.
Yeah, no, good. It's definitely a good choice. Uh, I love your main character of the Shen. He's a pretty interesting character because he's complex in that. he has a history. He doesn't like violence. He suffers from PTSD, which is not a term that was used back then, but quite
No.
clearly is
Mm.
what the guy is going through. Uh, he's smart. I fuck, I feel him all the way through this with that limp, and
Yeah.
he's really struggling, but he still gets there's some. I've said this to you before. You write cinematic moments, and he gets a couple of moments that are you could see on the big screen. I reckon. I'm fully invested in this character. What were your main motivations for creating him, and has has he how has he stayed true to what you thought he would be, and then how has he surprised you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one that I think and it's a great question because initially I wrote him with a very sort of, as we said, like that first book, purely that first book in mind. So I needed to sort of think how would I wanted to tell a story about somebody who's essentially a civilian,
Mm,
who's seen a side of war, who's caught in and this is the same through all three books. They're put in a moral quandary, and they have to find their own way through it. They can't rely on other guidance or the directives of a country or even, for want of a better word, laws
mm,
or ideas about, uh, patriotism, because the pressures they're under are very unique and oftentimes around family or their own set of circumstances, right? So, um, in the first book, Duchenne was very much like a principled man who had to guide himself and be his own guidance through
mm,
a difficult situation. But because he'd seen this war, I thought, well, and it was a challenge I wanted to set myself. I thought, all too often do I, rely on in previous books I've written that people kind of, sort of in a neo-noir style, punching their way out of a situation or using violence or action to sort of get out of a problem. And I wanted, as you were saying, I wanted him to be the sort of intellectual type character,
mm.
who could think his way out of a problem. So, and by setting those boundaries, it sort of interestingly made it easier to write. Um, but then as I went along, I needed to think about ways that he could be drawn into the world, and sort of compromise his position. Like he doesn't want to work um, for the French government. They want to draw
Yeah.
him back into being, and the second book he absolutely refuses. But by the third book,
Mm,
and that's what surprised me from him as a character, is that even he couldn't resist the sort of press of the time and he was drawn back into this world and then he's essentially recommissioned into the French military to sort of act as a spy
yeah.
hunter.
Yeah.
So those were things that I'd never planned for him as a character, and they're more the sort of overarching thread. Like sometimes when I'm writing secondary characters, I'll often be surprised by something they will do or say that I hadn't planned for because I have less invested in them. But with him,
Right.
because he's the central character, I sort of needed to know more. But then, so over time, it was a long journey of a surprise, not a sudden snap of I hadn't anticipated
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because he uh to find him in this position now where uh and he's pretty well respected. Like, he's doing well in
Yeah.
the hierarchy of where he's working. One of the things I've always loved about him as well is when we first meet him, he's just the guy that finds people. And
Yes.
that is such a uh it's such a simple and powerful sentence because you just immediately go, cool, I get that. And it's always been, I think there's a point where um, I think a a Russian agent refers to him as, he's someone who finds people.
Mm.
It's done in a slightly um, it's done in a way that when people read it will be surprised by it. But when it happens, it's like, oh yeah, even people who don't really know him, this has followed him through all these years and all these
Yeah,
adventures.
it's become his reputation. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, we've talked about the injuries. I'm dying to know. Uh, have you written yourself into corners at some points where you think, oh man, if he could just do a little jog, or he if he could just climb up out of this situation. Is
I,
there?
I, I almost did. So at the end of the first book, I was going to have him lose a few fingers in a confrontation, we scrapped it. I had a fantastic edit on that book, and they said
Yeah,
he's not the kind of guy who'd get, he's more of a think his way out of a problem. That's really good, reminding me about, so it's very easy for me with the benefit of hindsight to say, oh, he's always been a guy who thinks about himself, but it's not without the assistance of editors having to draw me back onto that as a thread. So yeah,
yeah,
there was going to be a confrontation at the end of the end of the first book where he lost some fingers, and that would have made things very difficult for him to do things like have to ride a motorbike or, or steer a car or
yeah,
shoot a gun or whatever. But yeah, other than that, as I was saying, it's actually really liberating because
mm,
you discount certain things and it keeps you focused on and narrows you don't have this like smorgasbord of opportunity of like, how are we going to get out of this situation? It's like, well, we can
mm,
only really do it this way and we can't run too
yeah,
fast. But it also meant there are other characters around him that was sort of relying on him. And I kind of like this idea by the third book that everybody else sees him as this sort of, old,
yeah,
it's has to be assisted around the place, and he doesn't
yeah,
really appreciate everybody wanting to assist him. And I guess I'm
yeah,
just projecting my own age into it when I'm writing this sort of stuff. Like, you escalate it, but
yeah,
every morning you wake up with it's a bit stiff and oh, that's sore, and that's well,
yeah,
yeah. So, yeah, no, I almost wrote myself into a corner, but managed to
yeah.
avoid it.
I'm so glad you didn't chop off his fingers. Like he goes through enough. I always think about that in like TV shows or stuff like that, where they give a character a main
Yeah,
injury, and you go, "What happens if you have another 4 seasons?" Like
I know, I
this poor
know.
actor has to walk with a limp, or has to be, it's
Yes.
like even in dumb things like when they removed Thor's eye, and it's like, are you really going to have Chris Hemsworth? Oh, he's got a cybernetic eye. Okay,
Yeah,
we see you getting
they
out of
moved very
that
quickly on from that, didn't they? And that poor
very
Odin
quickly.
never got the benefit of a cybernetic eye. I mean,
Right, like he's the
what's
All
that come
Father.
to?
I feel like
Yeah,
he should have had the first bite of it.
yeah.
A couple more questions for you. Your characters are so well written. Do you? I'm curious to know how you plot a novel. And look, this might be one of those questions that's actually a little bit too cumbersome to answer. But how do you come up with an idea and then plot it, and then make sure that the characters aren't lost to the plot?
Uh, I mean, it's. I am a plotter. So there's some
Right.
writers who just sit down and they call them seat of the pants writers.
Yeah.
I much prefer to sit down and work out. And things will change.
Mm,
You might flip a scene here or say that doesn't quite marry up, or I've come
mm,
in earlier here now, and I have to work out something to fix there. So it doesn't mean that things don't
mm,
change, but I work out the entire plot. But to your point, and it's a really astute one, is I go, how do I make sure that character is front and center in this moment? Because
mm,
it's trying to find that perfect storm of there's drama between characters as well as you're driving the narrative forwards, which means it sort of invests more. And they often say of writing, like, it's not necessarily the scenes that people remember, but what the character's experience of those scenes are, or the conflict between the characters in those scenes.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah, I mean, Jaws, all the stuff between them on the boat, and the
Yeah.
conflict between them, and is sort of some of the more memorable moments out of that film.
Yeah.
Obviously, the big shark coming out is pretty memorable as well. But
Yeah.
so yeah, so I try to interweave that and make sure that when I'm thinking about, so sometimes I'll basically go, here are my plot beats that I need to tell the story. Essentially, it's a mystery. You need to reveal A to go to B, B to go to C, etc. And you might have two lines of mystery. So you'll
Yeah.
have K through LM or whatever instead of ABC. And then I'll have the key character beats as well. Duchene and his wife have a conversation, or they have a
Mm,
conflict or a disagree about something, or there's a question about his loyalty or something, and he's being interrogated, or there's questioning this, or whatever it is.
mm.
And then I try to link those into those key plot points so that everything's having a sort of dual function as we're working through it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and that's why uh I think that's what makes it so compelling, because you yeah, like you're constantly worried for everyone in
Yeah.
in the book, and it's and the momentum of the plot is the reason I was fascinated by it is because I almost forget about the plot because I'm reading
No,
about the
yeah.
characters, which I
Yeah.
think is a good sign.
Oh, that's great.
Uh,
Yeah.
you're never thinking about how's this all happening. It's like, oh, hang on, just even um, just even the simple stuff with the visit to the school, and
Mm,
you're always like I was invested in the I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but the teacher there,
yes.
and and her wanting to go to where the kids were that hadn't been picked up and looked after, and like I didn't know how that scene was going to play out, and oh, she knows that there's children there that they're going to have to find. Anyway, I think that's a real skill of yours, and
Oh, thank you.
that's why when plot things happen, it's like, oh yeah, right, okay, so. There's so many interesting characters in this, and as we said, the novels are standalone. Like you could read this one first, and then you could
Yeah.
go back and you could read the first one, then the second one, and you'd get all these adventures. And but there's lots of interesting characters in here. Like there's still the daughter's still out there doing stuff. One of your characters that I really liked, and I can't he was Gagne, Gag.
Oh, yeah. Gagne. Yeah.
Yeah, Gagne. Yeah. Uh I don't know why. I just really dug him. I just
No, so
really
do.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there was a similar type of guy in the previous in the Berlin Traitor who kind of filled that mold a little bit. And I'm wondering, uh, are there new adventures here? Are there because this is an interesting period in time. You have all these fascinating characters uh, bouncing all over the place. Is this an awful question to ask you because you've just written this book and give me a
Yeah.
break? I need to breathe.
I mean, look, I definitely have ideas for things that could happen
Mm,
um, with the characters. Certainly, as you point out, Marianne, the daughter, is there, and
yeah,
by this point in the story is essentially a foreign correspondent, a
yeah,
journalist, somebody, you could very easily tell stories through somebody who's investigating things as a journalist.
yeah.
And she
And is
has
she
these
in
sort of
Africa at the moment?
she no,
Where is she?
she's in at this point we're calling it French Indochina, but basically in
Oh,
Vietnam, because of course we're
Vietnam.
going to
Yep.
have uh, you know we're going to have a Ho Chi Minh, and there'll be a
Yeah.
insurgency there. So but this is the sort of laying the seeds of other stories we could tell. But
Mm,
I always can't help myself but leave a sort of open door for those
mm,
characters. And interesting to Gagne and the character. I mean, he basically I needed a character to sort of be the sort of, for want of a better word, the caretaker of
mm.
Duchenne, because they didn't want to leave him alone because he's a valuable asset to the French Secret
Yeah.
Service, but also he gets around on a walking stick. He's not, they think he can't look after himself. He might disagree. Um,
Yeah.
he was a complete surprise to me as a character. Everything I wrote about him, you just start with, he needs to be sort of Gallic. He's
Yeah.
French. He's chain
Yeah.
smoking and he's
Yeah.
silent and stoic, and then you sort of find ways to write a sense of humor into him and build him out as a character. And yeah, so they're all still around, of course. That there will still
Yeah.
be this, and there's ways of them drawing back in. I mean, there's still a further. If I wanted to tell further stories in Berlin, there's much, as we said, the wall hasn't as yet gone up. There's
Yeah.
the Stasi, the awful Stasi, the secret police of East Berlin haven't been established yet, and there's a whole
Yeah.
story we could tell around all of that. So definitely possibilities, definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Garnier turns up in certain moments where you're like, oh, thank God this guy's here. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
also interesting without even mentioning it. He kind of has a parallel character in the other part of the story.
Yeah.
and their stories are very different, but there's mild parallels that I was
Yes.
reading at the time. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, look, the reason I ask is I'd be happy to re-enter this world and continue finding out what happens. Before I let you go, a couple of things. Do you have a? So I was going to ask you what you have coming up next, and then when I was just doing a little bit of work, there's a book here with no cover that says 2026 Penitent. Is
Yes.
that so
Yes.
you have one on the way?
Yes, I'm in the process of editing it. I've written it,
Oh,
and
great.
I enjoy writing historical fiction, but I wanted to do a standalone that was I noticed a lot of my peers and other crime and thriller writers are doing standalone books.
Yep.
Because I think it gives you each one's a fresh opportunity to find a new readership. I think
Yep.
is largely why. As much
Yep.
as I enjoyed writing a series, the further in you get, the sort of potentially the more challenging it seemed to a reader to sort of pick up, because I've got to go back and read those,
Right.
or do
Yeah,
I have to? Yeah, that sort
yeah.
of,
It's
yeah,
like me
it's
trying to
understandable.
convince people they should watch Mad Men for the first time, and they say seven
Yeah, exactly.
seasons. It's like,
Seven
no, it'll
seasons.
fly,
Yeah,
mate.
exactly. Yeah, watch The Sopranos. I mean, what? And back when a season, I mean, well, more with The Sopranos, when a season was proper 20 something episodes, not
Oh
these
yeah, yeah, yeah,
6 episode seasons, you know.
yeah. No, mate, that's
But
a
anyway,
sprint.
I digress.
But
So yeah,
but I
Penitent.
reckon these books are standalone as well. I
Yeah,
think
no,
that's
I
part of the
appreciate you
strength of
saying that.
them.
I did try to write them in a way that you could rediscover them, but I think
Yeah,
even when they say talk about the character in a way that's even on the blurb or on the cover or when promoting it,
yeah,
the publicists will talk about it and marketing will talk about it in the sense of it being part of a series. And I still even just
yeah,
that as an idea, it's like, oh, I'm out, you
yeah.
know.
Right.
But yeah, so Penitent is a contemporary book set. Uh, Melbourne, London, I've tried to dodge in a kind of one of its influences would be Seven. They never say where Seven is set. It's just you just
Oh
know it's
yeah,
somewhere and
yeah.
you know
Somewhere,
uh
somewhere
somewhere.
in
So
hell.
it's a contemporary thriller
Yep.
about a Catholic priest who hears a confession from someone who says they're going to kill again, and of course they're not allowed to breach the seal of the confessional,
Uh,
and then that's the moral quandary they're placed under, and religious and spiritual quandary. And then they basically it's a way to for them to sort of go, well, am I breaching it if I go and try and figure out who this person is,
yeah.
and stop them? So it's this one I've told it from four perspectives. So
Oh,
there's
great.
yeah. So there's the priest. There's a young police detective.
Yep.
There's a journalist who is the former girlfriend of the priest because he's come to the priesthood at later life. So he's had a relationship. Part of why he's a sort of a firebrand. Bob Montgomery was a famous priest down here in Melbourne who's known for being a
Yeah.
bit outspoken, Father Bob. He's sort of like a
Yep.
younger, sexier version of Father Bob. He's a little bit outspoken so there's a bit of politics with the Catholic Church. And then there's another character who's an older priest who's sort of retiring and leaving the parish that this new priest is in. So it was a very different thing to write. I had to sort of revisit having been no longer practicing, but been raised as a Catholic, sort of reminding myself of what that was all like.
Yep.
And then the challenge to write characters, I had to remind myself, like, and Conclave was very influential in that. The talking about
Oh,
Robert Harris
yeah.
earlier,
Yeah.
because your characters are priests, they think like priests. So of course,
Yeah.
inevitably they will pray, and it's interesting mindset to sort of, even though I'm not religious, but to think in the way that a religious person might think about challenges. The first thing they
Yeah.
might do is pray for guidance, or how they see and exploring the sort of some of the nuance around I guess morality and detail around the way that not only the Vatican law works, but also the way that Catholic scholars have written about the sort of questions and
Mm.
moral challenges that they have. But basically, the sort of compelling pitch is it's a sort of serial killer story where a serial killer confesses, and yeah,
Oh, that's
how do we
great.
how does the
Great.
how characters stop them? Yeah.
Mate, there'll be a whole lot of lapsed Catholics out there that'll be right up for hot priest, Father
Well,
Bob
yeah,
protagonist. Do
exactly.
you know what I mean? It was big in
Well, I mean,
Fleabag. It's good for you.
yeah, exactly. It's been the Thornbirds, Colin McCulloch. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
first. I'm not saying this is a new idea, right? Yeah,
No,
we've got
no,
Andrew
I think,
Scott, and who
yeah.
play? I don't know who played it in the Thornbirds TV series,
Was it Richard
but anyway,
Chamberlain?
it might have been Richard Chamberlain. Good one, good call.
Yeah,
Yeah, there we
far
go.
out.
Look at that.
can't remember lots of things, but I can remember Richard Chamberlain in the Thornbirds. We talked about Blade Runner on this podcast recently,
We
and
did, we did.
I was going to say off air, hey, what's the next movie you want to tackle? Maybe we should tackle Seven.
Yeah, I could do seven. I mean, I'm always happy to go back and do, as you suggested, Miller's Crossing. That would be great. But
Oh
seven,
yeah,
love seven. Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
another influence on this one too for me was Villeneuve, Prisoners.
Oh
But
yeah,
that's some bleak business there.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
angry Hugh Jackman.
yeah,
Uh, and then twitchy Jake Gyllenhaal. It's all
yeah,
happening.
yeah.
Well, maybe we should do Miller's Crossing next, and then as we get closer to the next novel coming out, we can delve into Seven. But let's not talk about the next one just yet, because this one is ready to
Yes,
go.
that's right.
Where is it out now, or is it coming out soon?
So it is out now. It
Great.
came out 2 weeks ago, so it'll be out. It's on bookstores. It's available as an e-book as well, and then I think in about 3 weeks, maybe four weeks time, it'll come out as a audiobook,
Oh, great. Are
via
you reading it?
all channels. No, no, the same uh, voice narrator actor who read the previous two is reading this one.
Great.
His name's Stephen Perring. He's fantastic. And it's just so great to have him read all three because it sort of gives you the same narrator
Yeah.
across them. Yeah, it's fantastic. I really like it, what he does and how he interprets it. It's always, I listen to the audiobooks and there's things I've forgotten. It's almost like I forgot I wrote it because,
Oh, yeah.
you're hearing this audiobook and you go, oh, that's all right. Or sometimes, ooh, okay, maybe I shouldn't want to rewrite on that. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And where can people find you if they want to keep up with you on the socials?
Yes, so just on Instagram, Alex Hammond author. On Instagram, yeah, is where I occasionally post mostly updates about my writing.
Yeah, that was great. Congratulations on another fantastic book, and I look forward to getting you back on the podcast soon.
No, thank you, Justin, and thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you to Alex for joining me and talking about his latest book. Please, if you're looking for a run of books or just a one-off, his novels are great. As I said, real page turners. And I think I said numerous times, maybe in all three interviews with Alex, that I kind of feel that his storytelling is cinematic. There's real moments of action where I can picture them on the big screen. And I loved all three. And, who knows where these characters go, but I would not be unhappy to return to these characters at some point. But even though the writing is back to front, it's a good cover, and keep an eye out for that. Sometimes, it'll just be out the corner of your eye, and you'll go, "Oh, wait a minute! That's the Hammond book that Hammo was talking about. Yes, the two Hammos together." So please keep an eye out for that. And as always, a big thank you to Alex for joining me on the podcast. He's a good guy and erudite, and you know what? He's in my wheelhouse. We have things in common, so we were always going to have things to talk about. Before we go, I've reset my website. A big shout out to anyone who follows Garth Jones, who has been working tirelessly on just revamping my website. Over at justinhamilton.com.au. Over there, you can find links to different things, such as I've launched a Substack. And I have two ongoing pieces there. Dispatches from the Fury Road, which is something that you may have read at the old site. That is now living on Substack. But I'm also putting together, who knows how long this is going to go, but I'm putting together this new living written piece called One Foot in the Spotlight, which is going to cover my entire career and all the lessons I've learned while living this life. So there'll be some writing lessons, there'll be some performing lessons, there'll be some stories from a long, long time ago. There'll be a little bit of industry gossip. So there's a lot to take in. It's a memoir. That's what it is. Let's be honest. It's a goddamn memoir, Hammo. Just fucking call it that, mate. So you can find that over at Substack. Over at Patreon, you can find, if you're more audio inclined and more into the video side of things, you can find bonus podcasts, you can find live shows, and all sorts of extra bonus opportunities. Also, ad-free versions, if you listen to the audio, ad-free versions of this podcast. And then I'm finally, yes, very slow to this. I know I'm very slow to this, but I'm finally recording these as videos and putting them up on my YouTube page. And yep, we're slowly getting there. I'm at the moment hunting down all the bits and pieces that are all over the place. And recently I left my management, so I'm freelancing. So, it's funny. I'm getting a lot achieved, but the process is slow. So, if you'd like to get in early, we are slowly building things up there. And if you just feel like you don't see enough of my face, you can head over to YouTube and you can see more of me. And finally, yes, shows coming up. So this week I'm at the Comedy Store, the 28th to the 30th. I'll be hosting those shows, so they'll be fun. But on the 19th of September, I will be in Adelaide. We are doing the celebrating Adelaide Comedy's 25th anniversary, and I'll be putting on a show that has stand-up, has a band playing, and has a live podcast. So if you'd like to come to that, adelaidecomedy.com. Actually, you know what I should plug? I'm so sorry. I just remembered this. And look at me. I use an old-fashioned diary. This diary is known as a Vanessa. For those of you who are watching the video, this is known as a Vanessa. And it is the longest relationship I've ever had. Quite a few decades. On the 3rd of September, I'm hosting the Generosity Abroad fundraiser, which starts at 7 p.m. at the Comedy Store in Sydney. So if you head to the Sydney Comedy Store, you can find details out about that. It's got a pretty wild lineup from what I've seen. Becky Lucas, I haven't seen Becky Lucas in ages. You just kind of get out of rhythm with comedians sometimes and you don't see them for a bit. So I know Becky's on, so I'm excited to see her, and there'll be a whole bunch of other great acts as well. It's going to be a good night. So if you feel like you want to do something good with your money, not just I don't know. That was really accidentally passive aggressive. But if you would like to come along, it'll be a good night, and that'll be on the 3rd of September, which is a Wednesday, 7:30, not too late either. So there you have it. But I've got a solo show coming up in Brisbane. We'll tell you more about that, but keep some early dates in December free. And yeah, you know what? You can find all of that stuff. I have to update the gig side of things, but most of those things you can find at justinhamilton.com.au. So you don't have to remember what was his Substack address, what was his Patreon address, what was all of this. If you just want to go and have a look at things, you can go over there. And some really good photos by Ian Laidlaw. Like, I hate having my photo taken, and I like these photos. So um, that's the mark of a good photographer. Anyway. Time to let you go. You guys have been fantastic. I will be back with some thoughts on Alien Earth. God damn it, this is in my wheelhouse. And I still have thoughts on Eddington, and I've seen the first Peacemaker. So keep an eye out for them. And yeah, look after yourself. I hope you're well. Until then.